Welcome back, everyone, to our deep dive into the Aceh War.
Aceh, yeah.
You know, last time we really got a good feel for that complex 19th century Aceh society.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, all that tension brewing with the Dutch.
Right, right.
But today, it's time to get tactical.
Okay.
To really dissect the military strategies of both sides.
Right.
Both Dutch and Aceh.
I'm ready.
Some of these strategies are going to really surprise you, I think.
Oh, I bet.
And along the way, we're going to discover how some seemingly simple misunderstandings had a massive impact on this decades-long conflict.
That's always fascinating to me, how, miscommunication can really escalate things.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Aceh, they had a reputation for standing their ground, especially when it came to protecting their incredibly valuable pepper trade.
Oh, for sure. Their economic lifeline.
Yeah, exactly. And, their control over the coastline wasn't exactly 100%.
Yeah, not at all.
Airtight.
Especially with those Uli Balang.
Right. The Uli Balang, those local leaders.
Yeah.
They had a lot of power. And let's just say some were a bit more, open to privateering, shall we say.
Oh, a bit more entrepreneurial, some might say.
Exactly. Which put the Dutch in a real bind.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They were stuck between that 1824 London Treaty, which said they had to protect international shipping from pirates.
Oh.
Including those operating off the Aceh coast.
So they had to police the waters.
Exactly.
All at the same time.
Respect Aceh's independence.
Respect Aceh's independence, yeah.
Tricky situation.
Talk about a diplomatic tightrope walk.
Absolutely.
So what do they do?
Well, they opted for what historians often call gunboat diplomacy.
Oh, here we go.
Basically showing off their naval might, by shelling Aceh's coasts whenever trade was disrupted.
So imagine you're going about your day in Aceh.
Right, just living life.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, you see warships on the horizon.
Oh, man.
And then, boom, cannon fire.
That'll get your attention.
Makes a statement.
Right. Yeah.
Talk about a strong message, yeah.
Definitely.
But if they thought that was going to, bring Aceh to heel, they were in for a big surprise.
Big time.
The Dutch really underestimated the Aceh.
It's amazing how their early strategy was completely thrown off by these fundamental misunderstandings.
Yeah, it happens all the time in history.
Of Aceh society.
It does,
For example, they seem to think that
was it?
If they could just capture the Kraton, the Sultan's palace, game over.
Yeah, that was the key, the magic bullet.
But that shows a real lack of understanding about how power was actually distributed in Aceh.
Right, because it wasn't as centralized as they assumed.
Exactly, the Sultan's authority. It was pretty limited.
Right.
They thought capturing the Kraton would make all those Uli Balang just fall in line.
I like that.
Yeah, okay, Sultan's gone, we give up.
Yeah, right.
But it wasn't like that at all.
Nope.
And this leads us to, of course, their first big blunder.
Okay, let's hear it.
The first Ace expedition.
The one in 1873?
1873, yeah.
Yeah.
A complete and utter...
Total disaster, wasn't it?
Disaster.
Yeah.
They couldn't even find the Kraton.
I know.
Let alone capture it.
It's like showing up for a party, and you don't even have the right address.
Right.
You're just wandering around, lost.
It was a combination of just, bad intel.
Right, bad intel.
Outdated maps.
Old map.
Completely misjudging the terrain.
Yeah, underestimating the Che defenses.
Big time.
It really shows how important good intelligence is, especially when you're fighting someone you don't really understand.
Yeah. So instead of this swift victory that they thought they were going to have, the Dutch ended up retreating. Heavy casualties.
How bad was it?
At least 45 dead.
Wow.
Over 400 wounded.
That's just the Dutch losses.
Yeah, and those are just the Dutch losses.
Yeah, we don't have reliable numbers for the Aceh.
It's really a reminder of how history tends to focus on, the losses of the victors.
The victors write the history books.
And the suffering of the other side often goes untold.
Absolutely.
So after this embarrassing defeat, did the Dutch learn their lesson?
Did they change their approach?
Did they try something new? Well, they definitely realized that brute force alone wasn't going
to cut it.
Be enough to break Aceh.
No.
But instead of really overhauling their strategy, They initially doubled down on
Right.
military force,
More the same.
trying to establish,
Okay.
a stronger foothold and
Yeah.
just impose their will
All right.
through firepower.
But didn't that just backfire again?
It had some unintended consequences.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Go
Let's
ahead.
dive into that.
Yeah.
So more of the same, huh? More military force.
Yeah, and, it kind of pushed the
Hmm.
the traditional leaders,
The Uli belong.
the Uli Belong, further away.
Oh, so it had the opposite effect.
Geecher into the hills.
Yeah.
Created a power vacuum, really.
Yeah. Interesting. So who filled that vacuum?
Well, it allowed
Yeah.
a different kind of leader to emerge,
Okay.
the ulama.
The ulama, the religious scholars.
Yeah, the religious scholars.
Okay.
It's fascinating
Yeah.
how conflict can really reshape
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah.
social landscape
Yeah.
in a place.
Absolutely.
Different groups rise to power,
Totally.
And the ulama, they were incredibly skilled at mobilizing the population.
Right. They had that moral authority.
Yeah, and they framed the resistance
Uh-huh.
as a defense of Aceh's faith
Oh, I see.
and identity,
Yeah.
which resonated
Of course, that's powerful.
deeply with a lot of people in Aceh.
So now
Yeah.
the Dutch are dealing with a much more,
Yeah,
complex and determined resistance movement.
exactly. This wasn't just a bunch of local chiefs.
Right. It's a whole different ballgame now.
This was a true people's war,
Yeah.
a struggle for their way of life.
Exactly.
How did the Dutch respond to this new challenge?
Yeah. This is where it gets a bit frustrating, to be honest.
Okay.
The Dutch, they just kept going back and forth
So they didn't really adapt.
between harsh crackdowns
Okay.
and then periods of inaction.
Like a pendulum swinging.
Yeah. One historian even called it
Who was that?
the ruinous oscillation. Anthony
The
Reed.
ruinous oscillation.
Yeah.
I can see why that would be a problem.
Yeah. It's
We
like
had,
they're
like-
sending mixed messages, right?
You can't build any kind of trust
Exactly.
or momentum.
But no, it just undermines everything.
So what was their next big idea?
Okay.
Their next attempt to
Yeah.
gain some control over the situation?
They came up with what they called the concentrated line.
Concentrated line.
Basically, they decided to hunker down,
Mm.
build this fortified line around their main base,
Okay.
Kutaraja,
Present-day Banda Aid.
present-day Banda Ace.
Yeah.
The idea was to create a safe zone,
Okay.
protect what they had,
Right.
and then slowly expand outward,
Mm.
eventually force the Aceh to submit.
It sounds very defensive.
Yeah.
Almost like a siege mentality.
Yeah, it was a way to kind of...
Didn't that limit
Yeah,
their
I
ability
guess.
to really
It did.
engage with the Aceh?
It limited their flexibility, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, it gave them security, but it also made them vulnerable
Mm.
in other ways.
Because they're concentrating their forces
Exactly. All their eggs in one basket.
in one area.
Yeah.
They can't respond quickly to attacks outside of that line.
Tough stuff.
Classic dilemma.
It is, yeah.
Balance between defense and offense.
Yeah.
And it's at this point
Okay.
that we encounter this
Mm-hmm.
fascinating figure,
Oh, yeah.
Tuku Uma.
Tuku Uma. I've heard of him.
He was a powerful Uli Balang
Okay.
who ends up becoming this key collaborator with the Dutch.
So he's working with the enemy?
They're giving him resources,
Wow.
troops.
Really?
He even helps them expand the concentrated line.
So he's playing both sides.
But was he really on their side?
That's the question, isn't
That's
it?
the big question.
Yeah, what was his game?
It's a complicated story.
Oh, I bet.
He's playing the role of this loyal ally.
Okay.
But it seems like
Yeah.
he was always working both sides, playing the long game.
Maneuvering for his own personal gain.
Smart, but risky.
Yeah.
So, did the Dutch ever figure him out?
They did.
Really?
They finally started to realize that he
Right.
was playing them.
And what happened then?
And they decided to cut him off,
Oh, that's got to be a turning point.
which led to some dramatic events.
I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break and then we'll dive into that. So, the Dutch cut Tuku Uma off.
Yeah, they finally realized he was playing both sides.
Wow.
And, it led to this really fascinating turn of events.
All right, I'm hooked.
So by 1903,
Okay.
most Aceh leaders
Mm-hmm.
had signed the Korte Verklaring,
Right. The short declaration.
the short declaration, right?
A major shift in the conflict.
Yeah, on the surface, it seemed like the Dutch had
Mhm.
finally figured it out.
Yeah, like they'd cracked the code.
They had found a way
Mhm.
to work with the Aceh
Instead of constantly fighting them.
instead of just fighting them all the time.
Right.
But was it really that simple?
Well, not quite.
What was going on
There were a lot of
beneath the surface?
unresolved issues.
The Korte Verklaring, it was all about,
Yeah, it was about bringing the Uli Balang on board.
co-opting the Uli Balang.
Right, making them partners in a way.
But it didn't really address those
The
deeper
line.
issues.
The root cause
The
is...
resentment towards foreign rule, the desire for
Yeah.
independence for Aceh,
Right, the desire for self-determination.
and, of course, the influence of the ulama.
Yeah, the religious leaders.
Those didn't just disappear.
No, they didn't just vanish overnight.
So in a way,
Yeah.
the Dutch might have actually made things worse.
They might have sown the seeds for future conflict
Yeah.
by trying to create peace and stability.
Yeah, by trying to impose their own version of peace and stability.
Exactly. It's like,
So how did that play out?
well, the Dutch, they basically empowered the Uli Balang
Okay.
to act as these
Like middlemen.
middlemen
Yeah.
to enforce Dutch rule at the local level.
But remember,
Yeah.
the Uli Balang's power,
Right.
it wasn't really based on
Not really on popular support.
popular support. Yeah.
No. So now
And now they're seen as puppets of the Dutch.
they're seen as puppets of the Dutch.
Yeah, collaborators.
Collaborators.
Which obviously created resentment.
It must have alienated the
Boy,
people who had always resisted Dutch rule,
It did.
especially the ulama.
Right. They saw it as a betrayal.
They saw it as a betrayal.
Yeah, of their faith, their identity.
Yeah, of their faith, of their identity.
So the Korte Verklaring,
Yeah.
it brought a certain degree of peace.
It did bring a degree of peace, yeah.
But it also created this new set of tensions.
Almost like a simmering resentment under the
Tension.
surface.
Yeah.
What about the human cost of the war?
Did the fighting completely stop
Not completely.
after the Korte Verklaring?
The big battles subsided,
Okay.
but there were still smaller conflicts.
Okay.
Uprisings, acts of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
The Dutch still used military force to maintain order,
Yeah.
and people were still dying.
No. It wasn't a clean,
No, not at all.
happily ever after.
And like a simmering pot, you know?
Just waiting to boil over.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the most important takeaway here?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the Aceh War, it wasn't just about military victories or defeats.
It was about something bigger.
It was about a clash of cultures,
Yeah.
a struggle for control,
Uh-huh.
complexities of colonialism.
The Dutch tried to impose their vision
They did.
on Aceh,
Uh-huh.
but they had to adapt.
They did in the
They
end.
had to compromise.
And even though the Korte Verklaring brought,
Yeah.
a period of relative stability,
Right.
it also created new tensions that would shape Aceh's future for generations to come.
It's a powerful reminder
It is
that history is never truly over.
the past is always with us.
The echoes of these events,
Yeah,
they continue to resonate.
they do.
And it's up to us
Right.
to listen and learn
To learn from the past.
from the past.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it.
That's our deep dive.
Our deep dive into the Aceh War.
The Aceh War.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Keep diving.